What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 123, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by my two good friends and co-hosts, Roffle and Corbett. Guys, how you doing this week?
Doing all right. Episode 123. I mean, that's already counting better than my Twitch chat, so that's looking pretty good. And you know, we're like a week away from balance changes, so clearly everything both in our format and in standard is perfect right now. Everybody's happy. And we'll have a nice, uplifting, positive episode.
Well, you know, they might not quite go that way, Roffle. We'll see.
This is where if we could do Twitch emotes, this would be like the clueless face.
Clueless.
Yeah, it's clueless. Yeah, surely this will be a nice, positive, uplifting episode. All right, so this week, what we're going to be doing, we're about a week and a half out from the most recent balance patch that happened, that changed a bunch of cards, nerfs and buffs to standard. And we're going to be just talking about kind of how they've impacted the WoW format. And so when I asked the guys about the topics for today and what they wanted to talk about, Corb was like, yeah, I can talk, it just won't be nice. And so I know Corb has been kind of vocal about how he's feeling about the format over on Twitter, and so I'm gonna kind of just like let you take it away. I know your experience is limited to like 11x MMR, right? Top 200-ish on NA is what the people you're queuing into, so your experience might not be what everybody else is, but it also sounds like it's a little bit common. So I'm just going to let you kind of take it away with how are you feeling about the WoW format?
Yeah, my general feelings on the format have moved past rage. So, like, I was very pissed off at the end of last month, but now I'm kind of just like, it's part of the acceptance stage, right? I'm just sort of moving on, and now I'm just apathetic, and I'm sort of just waiting for the mini set. Because right now, Wild it's a hellhole. Like, I can't remember a meta I hated this much. Excluding like the very like expansion launches, right? Because that's kind of how WoW usually works. Usually the expansion launches the gods flip a coin, and it's either completely a shit show or it's not, and then they either come in and fix something or they don't. And once they make that first ban, first nerf, whatever, then we settle into something a bit more normal. For the normal portion of the format, I despise this right now. It's horrible. There's a lot of Disco Warlock. There's a lot of Pillager. The aggro decks are bottable, and like they're just not engaging to me. We're seeing the same archetypes that we've seen for a long time. Mostly the format, it just isn't fun. It just isn't fun. Like, I'm not enjoying it. There isn't anything that I want to grab into. There's nothing that it really makes me want to play that much. And so I'm kind of drifting over. I'm doing like standard climbing instead. And that's basically where I'm at. So not a good time in the land of 11x, but I know that the land of 10x and below is also maybe not having the most fruitful best games of their lives either. So not a great spot for Wild as a whole, I think.
Yeah, as the resident 10x gamer on the call, I can confirm. I have been intentionally not taking advantage of my win streak to get into the Diamond 5 rank band, because once I get there, I know that I will just be queuing into those bottable decks that have a substantial portion of my games will just be against very clear robots. And if I see another turn 1 hero power into Totemic Might, I might lose my mind, especially if I inevitably lose that game. I actually saw a turn 1 Totemic Surge, Totemic Might hero power game. Like, the bots are getting worse somehow. and that's still again at Legend MMR. So like you said, the aggro decks for the most part aren't engaging for me. Matchups against decks typically found at higher legend, like either a quest mage or Disco Lock is starting to fall down the ladder, which is unfortunate because anytime I see a warlock facing me, I'm just waiting for turn 6 to lose, and that doesn't feel good. And then like, some of the decks that I like to play, if I do happen to like find the Errant Quest Mage, that's not very very fun either. You can't really even seemingly um like just out resource or out remove a vast majority of the aggro decks in the format anyway. Because like even Shamans has seemingly limitless resources on top of like being able to jump on you very quickly. So like I don't know. There aren't a lot of decks that you're allowed to play right now. It kind of feels to me back like the in the United and Stormwind metagame where we had those three decks that were just like covering each other's bases while, being very strong. And so you had three decks that you were allowed to play. It's a little bit different now. You have like two archetypes that you're allowed to play. You can either play very fast combo or very fast aggro, or a slight variation of very fast aggro in anti-aggro that still aggroes the other like non-aggro decks. So it's like you're very very limited in what you're allowed to play in the format right now, which the whole reason I play Wild is for the supposed variety. But like, yeah, there's maybe a variety in classes, but like it's still the same problem that we talked about previously, where you're very limited in what archetypes you're just allowed to play. There's a very narrow window of turn length that you're allowed to play in as well.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about. I know Corby, you put out a tweet earlier. Top Legend meta is like 40% discard Warlock and 20% Pillager, and then like 40% other. And I'm assuming those numbers haven't trickled down, especially the Pillager Rogue numbers. But I'm assuming, Roffle, I don't know if you have your numbers on hand, but I'm assuming like 50-60% or more of those even Shaman, Pirate Rogue, Secret Mage style decks.
If I were playing at Diamond 5 again, I'm hanging out just cruising at Diamond 10 right now. I did a quick run with the latest Copper Brainchild in the Outcast Aggro Demon Hunter, and that deck's really sweet and a lot of fun. I did a quick run with that to Diamond 10, and then I've just been kind of cruising there for a bit. But yeah, before when I was in like the Diamond 5 MMR at Legend, like that was pretty much all I saw was those three decks, and that's why I'm like pumping the brakes and trying to avoid getting back there, because I don't just want to continually queue into the same decks. And pretty soon, I think you'll probably start seeing quite a lot of Disco Lux, jumping into that to round out like four decks that you'll can expect to see in that rank band.
Yeah, so like the tweet that I put out where I put out the numbers, that was just for like a week period. And the numbers aren't quite that high. I'm assuming that I'm kind of at the upper end. But if you look at like from the 25th until now, like 30% of my games against Warlock and 21% against Rogue. So it was just in that particular stretch where I was kind of going insane. Because like queuing 40% disco is not fun. But yeah, that's really what it feels like. And to me, like disco is such a for me, it's like it's like a personal thing where I'm going to probably hate this archetype more than most people, just because it particularly counters the type of stuff that I like playing against. Like I think like depending on what your preference is, you're gonna hate particular decks more, right? Depending on what kind of thing you like to do. Like I know Roffle obviously didn't like Pirate Warrior for a very long time because like it was particularly good against a lot of things that he was probably using. And the type of decks and type of content that he was making. But everyone has that. And for me, Disco is particularly punishing against decks that try to win on board that aren't just like smork. So for things like Inner Fire Priest or I don't know, the DH deck or just like whatever, just like playing generally for like board swings and things like that, the Cataclysm just crushes. And so it just kind of makes the game just come down to do they have the Cataclysm or not? And it's so frustrating. And so, yeah, it does feel very pigeonholing. So it's like, I don't like losing to Quest Mage Pillager. Fair enough. Okay, so I want to play aggro, but the aggro decks aren't engaging, right? And that's kind of the problem, is that, like, I don't want to play a deck that is, like, bottable. Like, it's not getting the grey matter going upstairs. And so it's hard for me right now to find, like, decks that I find fun, that do well, that feel good, and I think that most of this comes back to me for Disco, but at the same time, there's the other aggro decks that Ruffle's talking about, and those are just so prevalent throughout ladder that you know, that's its other issue, and like that still can be very frustrating as well. And so overall, it's just yuck, man. Like I don't like where we're at right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about the fact that like decks like Pirate Rogue and even Shaman in particular are so like straightforward and, as you say, bottable that they can maintain a pretty solid win rate in spite of the absurd plays like I talked about with the hero power 0 mana card or 0 mana 0 mana hero power absurdity. That like in spite of that, those decks can still maintain a positive, strongly positive win rate and a good matchup spread across the board. Like those decks still win because they're powerful and it doesn't matter how you play them. And I also like feel very similar to you about the Disco Warlock. To me, it feels very much like a playing against Darkest Hour Warlock, where you're just like you have this very narrow window where you have an opening to kill them. Um, but most of the time you're just like praying they don't have the card. And if they have the card, you lose. If they don't have the card, they lose. And it's just like nobody's decision mattered here other than your decision not to draw Cataclysm, dummy. Like what is what is the point of, you know, just going and essentially playing coin flip simulator, which is, you know, what bothered me about Darkest Hour Warlock and feels very similar with Disco.
Yeah, I mean, so just a couple of quick topics to kind of dive in here. We good with the mini small therapy session about the meta. Yeah. We good? Okay. Just making sure. We have plenty of time to keep going if we need to. Okay, let's dive into this Discard Warlock. I know we've been talking about how it's still a problem, right? I think that's putting it plain and simple. I think we were all a fan of something getting hit in Discard Warlock when it was like the best tier 1 deck. And Tome Tempering did get banned. And I guess the question is there another fix for this deck, right? That's not just banning or nerfing another card out of the deck. Or like do we even think that like the play pattern out is like egregious for what the WoW format is? Like I know we might not like playing against it, and that's fair, but do we think the play pattern is something that, you know, is in line with the other things that they've changed in the format?
I don't think it's about play pattern ever, really, when it comes to what they change, right? It's a combination of things. It's always that, you know, that thing that we talk about where it's play pattern, power, popularity. And so like, you know, like Pillager Rogue, if that was 30% of the format, that'd probably change it. Like if Quest Mage was 30% of the format. So it's not just like, is Disco Warlock egregious play pattern wise? That said, it is. Like to me, like it makes me nauseous. Like I hate it. I rage against it. It's so frustrating. Like it's the you know the worst things to me in the game are typically decks that or cards even that specifically make you feel like a moron for trying to play for the board. And that whether that is Spreading Plague, right? Like Spreading Plague, you play your resources, you have to kill the Spreading. Yeah, I got punished because I put stuff on the board. Snowfall Guardian, great. I put stuff on the board because I have to kill. Oh, Snowfall Guardian, great. And Cataclysm's the same way, right? Like you have a clock where you have to kill them before they OTK you. But if you put resources on the board and they play Cataclysm, then you feel like a complete idiot, and it's like that nothing mattered up until that point. And I think that is, and even like Big Rogue. Big Rogue, another great example, right? Like stuff that punishes you for putting stuff on board and trying to play for board. And I think the Cataclysm is another, Disco Warlock in general is another example of that. The Disco high rolling in general is also just like filthy, you know? Like it's so stupid how like specifically whether you discard a card with Soulfire or not, the massive swings that happen are stupid, Solarium is stupid. I just find the entire deck to be like disgusting. And so yeah, sure, in terms of play pattern, great. Like I think it's gross and I want it gone. But that's not really the threshold that they use. And it kind of raised like another general frustration with Wild, which is that the nerf window is so tight because they almost always only nerf something when it initially pops up onto the scene and it explodes in popularity. And then if it goes away, if it makes it past that first stage, it's there forever. Like, they very, very, very rarely ever come back and nerf something that, like, after it's been in the format for some time. Because it's so hard for a deck to be at, like, a super high level of popularity if it isn't right after an expansion. And so, like, if they botch it, if they miss that change, you're probably just stuck with this for the rest of Wild, like as it goes. So that's what I think makes this is so frustrating, is that we knew that we were getting a discard change when the deck first came out, and now part of why I'm so annoyed is that I just don't think this is ever getting changed ever again. No matter how much I hate it, no matter how restrictive it feels, it probably is the way it is. So
do you think that if it explodes in popularity, right? Like if people listen to this podcast and they're like, okay, discard Warlock is nuts, right? And it goes from 30% at Legend to 30%. I'm sorry, Roffle, but if it goes to 30% at like Diamond 5 or at the 10x MMR, like it's gonna beat up on all the even shamans and stuff theoretically, right? Like it should explode in popularity. Do you think that they would ever? I mean, I guess I don't know why I'm asking you this, but like I feel like at that point they would still consider a second change, right?
yeah, like if the deck did get to 30% of the meta, or 25% of the meta at Diamond through Legend, then yeah, they probably would change it. But it's not, and it won't get that high. Like the numbers that you're putting out there, right? I was playing against like 30% disco at a very, very narrow high bracket at Legend. At Legend as a whole, since like the 25th, since the latest like patch came out, disco's the most popular deck at Legend. 10%. Like it's 10% of the meta. At Diamond, it's like 6.5. Like decks don't just radically explode for no reason. They need like an event. They need a catalyst, and it's just not gonna happen. Like it's just not gonna be a thing. So even if it's the most popular deck, you know, it's not gonna explode past Secret Mage numbers that we've typically seen. It's just gonna be like 15% max, and so there won't be any need for them to really step in, I think.
I'm not going to say that there won't be a need for them. I think that there's always the possibility that, like, God forbid, there's maybe some disco support in the mini set, or just some other like unforeseen circumstance that would re-inspire people to play it, or simply just like it becomes the new Secret Mage. Like I don't see a reason why it couldn't. It's probably easier to play than Secret Mage. You know, it's just kind of like, I don't know, it's also got like some of the nostalgia attached to it, like a Secret Mage has, where, you know, people like the discard mechanic. I personally don't. I would echo exactly what you said. In like, playing the deck is miserable, especially if you're playing the Soulfire version. Playing against the deck is miserable. Like I single-handedly lost a game because of the cards that my opponent Soulfired when they double Soulfired, just for absolutely no reason. And they like double Soulfired on a turn, and then next turn like had all of the stuff in hand still to Cataclysm kill me. And like it's very frustrating when that type of thing happens on either side, and trying to navigate the Soulfires. And then just like, yeah, I also am in complete agreement that, like, for me, the way I've always phrased it is like cards that punish you for winning the game, which is like a Spreading Plague or a Snowfall Guardian or something like that. Like that is one of the, you know, single most frustrating experiences, in the same way that like the spell-based Inner Fire deck is incredibly frustrating, because you are, you know, taking advantage of my success in order to win the game, and that's, you know, that's very frustrating. So Cataclysm feels very similar to that, because you just like, you know, you spend all this time and mana developing something, and then it's gone and the opponent kills you. But yeah, I mean, I could very well see it getting to a point where they need to intervene, but like I think Corb's right. Like things outside of High Legend are always going to be very different than they are down the ladder. Down the ladder, people are more likely to not even just experiment, but have fewer options in terms of what decks they can play. They might not have all the cards, and so I think it would take, you know, probably some sort of you know, initiating factor in order to get it to bump up to its pre-nerf popularity again, which is probably where it needs to be in terms of, you know, being on the radar for some sort of balance change. Because like the other thing, like, and another reason why it might not without some new card coming in or some new change coming in, is that like it was already nerfed, so like people have already written it off, even though you know, we're here talking about how it's a very strong deck again. That it's hard sometimes for a deck to recover its popularity after a nerf, even if it like approaches its previous power level. Like that's been consistent throughout the wild format, at least. It that doesn't seem to be as true in standard. Although it does things do take a little bit more time to catch back on after they've been nerfed, but they do eventually get there. In wild, it's almost as if like, nah, like that deck's dead now, even with like slight changes.
Yeah, we've seen that. Like, what was the most recent example? Like, Dark Lair is the one that comes to mind. Like,
Dark
super
Lair.
solid.
Miracle Rogue.
Miracle Rogue.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
happened.
Yeah.
Miracle Rogue just disappeared for like a while.
Yeah, it'll come back again, right? It got nerfed, so it'll come back. I'm messing. I just one little dig at Corb about the Miracle Rogue. I know he's not feeling great anyways, but so it does sound like if they are to make a change, it seems like you guys are all kind of in unison. Cataclysm seems like the card that you guys have been ranting about the most, and so I think I would rather see them get rid of that instead of something like Soul Barrage, like 100%.
I mean, I don't know. Like even something like moving Soul Barrage to 4 mana so that it like you have to think about the expired merchant into whether like with a Cataclysm in hand you can't just auto play the expired merchant. Like that could make things messy. The problem there is that you still have Fist of Jiraxis, so it's not perfect. Some people are still running the Hand of Gul'dan version. So that like there's I don't know. I'm not here to balance the game. I can tell you for sure when something is broken. I don't know how to fix it. That's that's beyond my expertise. I think that all what I know is that the Cataclysm, whether it's in the combo version or in the dump stats in the play version, that's the card that feels the worst to play into.
Yeah, Cataclysm is definitely sort of the thing that makes it, like not lose to things like Even Shaman, right? Like there should be a weakness there, you'd think, to some of the more faster board-based stuff, but it just isn't there a lot of the time because of the Cata. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's not Malkamp because the the slow combo version doesn't even play Malkamp, so don't have to worry about that one. But it's Cata or Barrage. I was advocating for Barrage for a long time. I think that if you take away Barrage, a big part of that is the expired merchant no longer really does its thing. So that's kind of good, and you make the deck much more board centric. But you could also just wipe Cataclysm and get rid of that or delay that big board swing. So I don't think there's a wrong answer necessarily.
Right. Again, because individually neither card is in and of itself too strong necessarily. It's the interaction between the two, and so that's that tends to be the issues that kind of break the format. Is not necessarily singular highly powered cards. It's new high powered cards combining with old high powered cards or old slept on cards that didn't have the synergy that this brings about, like a Cataclysm, that create a monster. And that's part of why it becomes difficult to either both predict and balance around, is because until you have those synergies and see them interact with one another, you don't know how strong they're going to be honest. And you don't just have any singular point where you can say this is the problem, because you're pointing at two things, right? It's Cataclysm, Soul Barrage, and the interaction between the two, not one of those individually.
Yeah. All right. So Discord Warlock is a deck. I will say it is a very good deck. If you are trying to climb to Legend, just don't queue into Roffle when you do it. But I think Discord Warlock is a choice that at least we'd recommend. When it does come to counters, it does seem like Legend players are kind of latching on to one deck in particular, I guess two, in order to counter Discard Warlock. So one of them is Pillager Rogue, which is something that we have known about back when Discard Warlock was the oppressive menace that needed something banned out of it. But the other one is an old favorite, a goodie in Cthulhu Druid. The deck that just gains 1,000,000 armor, you just survive all of the Soul Barrage damage. You're not really playing for board, so the Cataclysm doesn't really wreck you that hard. And without the Tome Tamperings, the discard warlocks don't really have, you know, the longevity that they used to have, and so people have kind of gone back to the Cthulhu Druids as a way to counter that, and they're seeing some pretty decent success. I know Mediocre just recently hit rank 1 legend a couple days ago with Cthulhu Druid, taking advantage of exactly that. I don't know. I don't know its matchups into everything else. Like I don't know the matchups into Even Shaman or things like that. But I don't know if you guys have insight into the matchup spread outside of favorable into Discard Warlock.
I imagine it maybe is a little bit easier to take advantage of that matchup when you're playing at higher ranks and you have a more predictable metagame, because I wouldn't. I mean, like Druid has been struggling for a while now, right? Like both in part because it didn't have much direction, people were doing weird things, but also like it just doesn't do that great into the aggro decks. And so if you're playing at not high legend, you're gonna hit those aggro decks and you're gonna lose a lot of games. But you know, then you run into the issue where if you're playing a high legend, you're probably gonna queue into some quest mages too, so you're gonna lose those games. So I don't know. You probably also lose to Pillager. So if you can reliably queue into a handful of discard warlocks, yeah, if it does hit that break point of, oh, this is a problematic population, then maybe that becomes a viable answer. It's you know it is good to see that like maybe people are finding a more substantial direction with Druid, because it was down there with like Demon Hunter and Warrior for a while. It was struggling like across all ranks at least. So you know, have a win condition in your Druid that ends the game, and then maybe have that armor against Disco Lock. But
yeah, Cthulhu Druid's pretty good. It's definitely like the best Druid direction that you can go with. I'm not actually sure it like really beats Disco that hard for what it's worth. It might be like slightly favored, but like I don't know. I think some of the early tempo can often like just push a lot of damage on the Druid. That's always like Druid's problem, right? So like if there's a Wicked Whispers and Begs, or like people obviously playing target dummy lists, like if some of those come down in the early game, it can be a bit of a tough spot. But yeah, like Druid's definitely pretty solid. Again, just don't queue into Quest Mage, otherwise very, 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 very bad things happen. So
yeah, it should specify it's probably better into the like combo version than into the more board based version. Just because the combo is like damage capped, right? And Druid can get out from under a lot of damage caps, so like it makes sense that would work. And that deck has a more reactive early game, which gives the Druid time to set up, whereas like the Egg Wicked Whispers version is going to be pushing, you know, chip damage in the early game to make it harder to tank up through.
Yep. All right. Now let's pivot to just another shorter topic that also is affecting the meta, and that is just a little bit on the botting issue, because I didn't know, or I don't know how much of the Even Shaman, Pirate Rogue, like Secret Mage population that everybody's complaining about are actually bots. I don't know if there is a way to tell, but I know even at top 200 legend, there's a significant problem, and I just don't know. It's, first of all, feels a little sad that some of the best decks in the format, I know we've touched on this, some of the best decks in the format are so easy that a bot could play them and get to like top 200 legend if it's a well-programmed bot. But I don't know. How does Blizzard do anything about this? Can they do anything about this?
I mean, they have in-game reporting now, but that just feels like sending off something into the void. And you know, there's always been I would consider a botting problem in Wild. I've been playing Wild for like, you know, 5-6 years now, and there's always been bots. It started with Pirate Warrior bots, and you know, they're pretty prevalent. It moved on to a variety of other things. Like, so it's always been a problem, but now it just seems like it's more apparent to us because those decks are so much more straightforward than any other deck we've had, that they can be more successful. So you see a high density of those bots at higher ranks, or at the ranks that we tend to play at least, because yeah, like I would consider it a problem, and it just like kind of reflects poorly on both the format and those specific decks that like they can be so successful with some of the most abysmal plays I've ever seen. The other issue that I think that it presents is kind of perception issues within the community, similar to what we had with like the Ignite Mage and the cheating issues, where like everybody's hyper accusatory for anytime they see like the slightest misstep or slight pauses between attacks that could just be like a mobile player dragging their finger across their screen. They're quick to jump to that's a bot, and like it just kind of, I don't know, creates tension within the community that's unpleasant. And I don't know, like, but people are far more correct about the bots than they were about the Ignite cheating, at least. But it's still like, I don't know, it feels bad. Like, imagine you're watching, or imagine you queue into a streamer and then you like pull up the stream afterwards and you see the spam of everybody accusing you of having been a bot. That can't feel good. Like, I don't know, man. Like it's just a bad situation. I don't know how to fix it other than just Blizzard playing a game of whack-a-mole. But like that, it seems difficult to determine if they don't have like solid, like if they don't have an automated or software way of like detecting when somebody is botting. Which like I don't know the details of how the bots are running, so I don't know how you could like track that.
Yeah, there's pretty crazy numbers. Or if you look at the leaderboard, right now in Americas there are like 950 people that have hit Legend and Standard. Guess how many people have hit Legend and Classic?
Over 3,000.
No, that's high, but it's like 1,800. It's like literally double of in Classic have hit Legend over Standard
on the 4th of the month.
It's just a bunch of bots playing against each other.
It's just a whole bunch of zoo bots playing against each other, and sorry, 1,500. So it's an extra like 500 or 550 compared to Standard in Classic, and it's just zoo.
Right, because there's no humans playing Classic.
Exactly, but the thing is, if you look at Wild Legends, right? There are 950 America's Legends right now in Standard. There are nearly 700 Wild. And you know why those numbers are so close? It isn't because Wild is like having a booming population, like everyone's jumping on board. No, it's really close because there are so many bots. There are hundreds of bots. Like, that number is way too close right now. Like, and it just highlights what's going on. It's the same thing like in EU, but NA in particular seems to have the closest number for sure between Standard and Wild, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. But the Classic number is mental though. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
Jeez, if that's not a sign about the state of Classic, I mean, I think that tells you something. But what does that also say for our format? Hold on.
It doesn't. Again, it just reflects poorly on the format across the board. Like,
you were talking about perception issue, right? Like, imagine if you're a Standard player. Like, I had a game last month where I was streaming on the last day of the month, and I queued in somebody ranked 65 Legend, and they were the most obvious even Shaman bot, where they do the thing where, like, if you just don't show lethal, they won't concede, even though they have like no chance to. Like, I'm at 30 health, and I was like, and this is an even Shaman bot at rank 65 Legend on the last day of the month. Like, it's a imagine if you're a Standard player that's watching that, and you're just like, wow, this is what Wild is, right? Like, even bots can get top 100 Legend, and yeah, I don't know. I click those report buttons. This is another insert the clueless face, because surely they do something, right? Yeah, like, why would there be a report button if they don't do anything? But yeah, the number keeps going up and up. I just want to talk about it a little bit, because it has been a little bit frustrating, and it's also kind of crazy because I always, like you mentioned, Roffle, I always knew that they were Pirate Warrior bots, but the fact now that they're botting like the tier 1 aggro deck, and they're doing so well with it, is a little bit scary and honestly a little bit disappointing, which is a little sad.
Yeah, it's never a good sign for the format when you start getting those like bots really climbing. And again, it kind of just goes back where it's like, it's hard to feel, like it's the type of deck where it's like, I'm not interested in playing this.
There are very few, like, you talk about Pirate Warrior, and you talk about some of the other the Darkest Hour Warlock for me as well. Like, even Shaman has always been right up there with those that I feel like everybody just sleeps on it because it's like, oh, it gives the illusion of playing fair. But even when it was like in the past, around Witchwood when it was the best deck in the format, it's just like it's just so boring to play. It's so boring to play against. And like now when it's the best deck in the format is some of the times when I'm just like having the least amount of fun because it just is so boring, man. Like at least at least you feel like you can get out from underneath a disco lock sometimes, but like the I don't know, the something about even shaman has always rubbed me the wrong way, and feeling like I can't even continually clear their boards. You can't. The control decks have a horrible matchup into it. It just it just feels dumb.
Yeah, I'll reserve my feelings about even shaman because might have opposing ones, but I would rather queue into an even shaman bot 24/7 than queue into the amount of discard warlock and pillager rogues that Corb was queuing into. So
man, that's a brutal. That's a brural either or, Meowth. I don't like either.
I think it's very clearly one or the other.
Sophie's choice.
All right, so we've been a little bit doomer. Let's end it on a little bit of a happy note. So there is a heroic Brawliseum going on for standard. So congrats, Corb, on your 12 wins. But more importantly than Corb's 12 wins is that when they have a heroic Brawliseum, that's always a sign that the mini set or an expansion is about to come. So maybe we're about to be saved by whatever the mini set for this set's going to be named, coming out maybe in a week or two. Maybe.
Yeah, if you look at historical precedent, I think like last year the mini set was the 15th of February. So the expansion came around the same time frame. So I think it's reasonable to expect it like, plus or minus a couple weeks. I guess we can't minus a couple weeks, but around that period of time, give or take a week or two, it's probably reasonable to expect. So the problem is, again, mini sets are mini, so handful of cards are going to come into play. In the past, when they have had impact, it's not necessarily been the most positive in impact. So,
oh, well, come on, Roffle. What's so bad about Big Priest, Big Shaman, and Secret Mage? Come on. What are you talking about?
Think about Primal Dungeoneer and all the good times that we had in Forged in the Barrens, all right?
Okay, maybe there's a bit of recency bias there because we have had some real rough mini sets. But we'll see. I don't know. If nothing else, like maybe a new inflection of cards between or influx of cards between the mini set and then reversions aren't too far behind that. We'll at least get people like playing something else. I don't know. Like that creates a shakeup, even if it's only short term, based on like new cards mean new things to test at least, and at least the human players that are on the ladder will maybe begin to test the new cards.
All 6 of us deep in the lab. It'll be good. The date that I've heard floated. And this is wrong. If this is wrong, you can go blame Ridiculous Hat, not me. Ridiculous Hat has floated the 14th, so happy Valentine's Day to all the gamers out there. You can go book a date with Disco, and it'll be a lovely time.
Damn, you took the joke I was gonna say. The moment you hinted before the show that it was gonna be the 14th, I was gonna make the same joke. Yeah, hopefully next week we're gonna have some spoilers to talk about, some new cards, and yeah, I'm gonna hold you to this. Or I guess I'll hold Hat to this. 10 days, mini set. From the time of recording this podcast. Which is exciting. Regardless of what the meta's like, it's always nice to see new cards and at least play with new cards. If not for just like a week before we realize they all suck and,
Yeah. I mean, new cards is just like new content to create, right? Yeah. So in our position, at least, it's like we have a reason or more incentive to try new things and to play new things, and like you get rid of the deck building block that you're at for a while, just because you get like some new cards to slot in and test out and try and build around even in some cases. So yeah, that was kind of doomer of me, but I'm still very much looking forward to a new set of cards because I want new cards to play with, because The ones that we have now aren't necessarily treating me well.
Yeah, between the stick and the carrot, I've been copping the stick a lot recently to try and innovate. It's not working very well. I need the carrot. I need that new card. I need that incentive dangled in front of me if it's going to be any deck building going on.
Yeah. Speaking of deck building, this is going to be a really weird transition, but we're getting to that time of the year where we're gonna have our time as WoW players, our Christmas. Reversions are coming soon, right? With the brand new Hearthstone year, and I'm just putting this out here now. We are going to be doing a reversions episode in the near future. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, just like we did for our yearly awards, we want to get community input on whether you think certain cards should get reverted or not. The controversial ones, right? The Demon Seed and Pirate Warrior quest. Yay. But we want the community opinion. So there will be another poll down in the comments, in the description for the podcast. If you guys could check that out, fill that out when you guys have a little bit of time. It'll be like as simple as like yes or no. Do you want this card reverted or not? For all the cards that are up for reversion this year, and we'll be talking about that in the next month or so. But yeah, guys, thanks for the little mini therapy session. Yeah, hopefully we'll have new cards to talk about next week, so we don't have to talk more about Discard Warlock and bots. But let the people know where they can find you guys and your content in the meantime.
Yeah, you can find me dodging both Diamond 5 and Legend for the next couple weeks at Twitch and YouTube at Roffle, and daily videos over on YouTube.
And you can always find me at Corbett on Twitch and Corbettgames on Twitter and YouTube.
You guys can find me at Get Me Out on all those platforms. Thanks again for listening all the way to the end, and we'll see you guys again next week.